This is Twit. Democrats in both houses of Congress introduced bills to ban paid prioritization. Jason Kebler writes for Vice, and he's here with us to explain this turn of events. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're glad you're here.
I think the best way to start off would be to explain what paid prioritization is, Jason.
Right, so paid prioritization is this idea of creating an internet fast lane. Basically, it's not exactly what we've seen with Netflix and Comcast deal to basically deliver faster streaming speeds, but it's kind of like that. Basically, it allows ISPs to charge content providers to send their content to users much faster than the other. Say YouTube could be delivered faster than Vimeo, Netflix could be delivered faster than Hulu Plus, depending on who is paying the ISPs on that end. And people are worried that would kind of just destroy the level playing field that the internet has right now.
Now, it's important to note that paid prioritization affects the connection between the edge provider, the Netflix and the YouTubes of the world, and the ISP. It does not affect the connection between the ISP and your house, essentially what they call the last mile. A paid prioritization doesn't sound like a horrible thing to me. At least it doesn't sound as horrible as arrangements that ISPs can have to receive money to get priority over the last mile. You know, there are some edge providers like Netflix and YouTube which just hammer the internet with traffic, especially during peak hours in the United States. And then there are others that hardly trickle out any content at all. It makes some amount of sense for companies to do different things like paid prioritization, like co-hosting their servers within the ISP's data center. Is this really? Do you really think this is a net neutrality issue, or is this just something similar to net neutrality?
Right. I think it is a net neutrality issue, kind of when you get down to it. It's not necessarily exactly the same thing because we're not talking about that last mile, but it's what you mentioned is kind of one of the main arguments for this. You have users who are essentially streaming tons of Netflix content or tons of high definition video, and basically the users who aren't doing that are forced to pay for it on the other end because the way things work right now, all of that content is considered the exact same by the ISPs, or at least it was until the January decision in the Court of Appeals that kind of struck that down. So that's the argument that Republicans and people who kind of are on, for lack of a better term, the ISP side say, makes the most sense to go about.
Now, this thing isn't going to pass, is it? I mean, there are Democrats in Congress who want this. The sponsors of the bill are Patrick Leahy, who's a Democrat from Vermont, and Doris Matsui, who's a representative. She's a California Democrat. They're in favor, not a single co-sponsor on the Republican side, and there's, the consensus is that the Republicans in the House are going to kill this thing. Why are they going to kill it? What is the Republicans' beef with this particular bill exactly?
Right now, it's just kind of the party line of, the government should not interfere in big business, and it doesn't go much further than that. I mean, you have kind of all the big names opposing any sort of further regulation by the FCC. You have, Ted Cruz, you have John Boehner and Eric Cantor all on the record as saying they don't support any sort of further regulation that the FCC could do. So there's no real chance that this goes anywhere. At best, maybe in the Senate they can force a vote and get some people on the record on this issue that haven't been on it before. But right now, it's just it's something just that Leahy and Matsui can say they tried, basically.
Right. Even if the bill doesn't pass, do you think, obviously net neutrality, that issue isn't going away. So will this have any effect on Tom Wheeler and the FCC?
I think this bill at least sends the message that Democrats in in the House and in Congress care very much about this issue, and people care about the issue, which we've seen from the John Oliver skit and the comments and some of the hearings. But kind of the more push there is behind this, the more kind of get the ball rolling for some sort of intervention in the future if the FCC decides it wants to kind of keep the internet the way it has been for the last decade or so.
Well, Jason Kebler, I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today. It's an interesting story. It's a bill that will probably never become a law, but it's interesting that somebody in Congress is listening to somebody in the public and trying to do something about net neutrality and the coming problem that we're having with increasingly slow connection, increasingly high bandwidth, and how do we make sure that it's an even playing field for startups and everybody else.